Hey there and welcome back. In this video, we're going to use multiband effects during the mastering process. You'll remember from our tutorials about dynamic effects from the mixing process how helpful they can be for recording and mixing in cleaning up and evening out your takes. Well, with multiband effects during mastering, you apply the processing to individual bands or frequency regions of the mix. You can compress the bass or widen the stereo image of the mid-range, etc. In this tutorial, we'll be learning about a multiband harmonic exciter and multiband stereo imaging for stereo expansion. Software multiband effects are a lot easier to use than their hardware equivalents. There's way fewer wiring issues and mix-down duplications required. The built-in algorithms are really complex. They let you split up your signal by frequency, make adjustments, and then recombine it to sound natural. The first step is to set the bands of your work. Here you see the spectrums divided into 4 bands, and we can easily adjust these. The vertical lines you see here represent the crossover points of the multiband effects. We can drag them left or right as we need. So how do you know where to set your frequency band? Well, first listen, watch the spectrum, then try to split your mix so that each region captures a prominent section. Here, band 1 covers the bass fundamentals, up to about 120 Hz. That's where the punch of your song lies. My second band goes from about 120 to 2 kHz, and here we've got all the vocal and melody instrument fundamentals. This region is where the warmth of a song lies. The third band covers the high mids to the treble from about 2 kHz to 10 kHz. So these are mostly my upper harmonics, cymbals, sibilants, and any hissing or harshness as well. This area is what gives your song its presence and sparkle. The fourth band is the top of the treble, 10 to 20 kHz. This is where your song gets its sense of air and life. It breathes. You don't have to use 4 bands. You can use as many as you need, actually. And don't worry if you don't know where to set the bands. You just learn by experimenting. So let's have a listen here.
Toi qui m'ouvris, t'as eu choquant, les croquantes et les croquants, tous les gens bien intentionnés s'amusaient de me voir.
And I'm listening to see if these default bands should be adjusted for my song. I'll go ahead and tweak. One super cool thing is that we can mute the output of the various bands to hear what's coming through the remaining bands that aren't muted. Let's check that out, listening to each band to see which sounds come from where. Here's the high band. And the third band now. Let's listen to the fundamentals. And now the bass. Now that our bands are defined, let's take a look at the harmonic exciter. In Ozone, you activate it by clicking here. It's green when it's active. A harmonic exciter happens to be an easy effect to hear, and it's very powerful. They're used to add presence and sparkle to a mix. They're used commonly in pop music, and it's really apparent in 80s music. Exciters create additional harmonics. It's different than boosting the high frequencies. That simply turns up existing harmonics. Exciters are easy to overdo, however, so be sure to listen to the wet and dry signals, or be sure to listen with the effect bypassed as a sanity check. That's because exciters can sound annoying and fatiguing after a while. By the way, you need less exciter use on genres like jazz or folk than dance or rock. The controls on this interface and many harmonic exciters are pretty straightforward. While your song plays, adjust the slider for each band. You bring in more sparkle by adjusting the higher bands. So as a strategy, overshoot, take it to the point where it starts to be annoying, and then work it back down from there. Higher bands can take a little more excitement. You can grunge up your bass with a little excitement down there, but that's not what I need for my piece. Another important tip for working with the exciter: watch out for adding extra noise. When an exciter is overused, it can generate some unwanted noise, so do be cautious. You'll hear that noise right away, especially when you overshoot the bass and mid-range frequencies. Let's try it out, having a listen. I want to add a little warmth and sparkle to my second band. I'm also going to make some adjustments to band 3 to boost the presence a bit. And we'll just first overshoot, finding out where it becomes annoying, and then drag it back down. That's definitely too much. Let's reduce the signal. It's still a little hot. There's a quieter section of the piece now where I find the vocals to seem a little dull, so let's see what we can do there with some fine-tuning. Let's adjust the third band. That's definitely too much. Let's lower the signal in the mix. And don't forget to bypass the effect for a sanity check. Here's the bypass button. Now let's take a look at the multiband stereo imaging tool. Stereo widening is different than panning. It expands the difference between the left and right channels by subtracting them from each other. When a signal is the same in both channels, it sounds in the middle. Hence, the subtraction algorithm results in a wider sound. You need to be careful not to overuse this effect because you run the risk of losing your middle. And for mid-range frequencies, you could end up with a hollow sound. That's an overshoot of the hole in the middle technique. Be extra careful if you've done something like pan your basses to the middle. Then the hole in the middle might end up with you losing your low end. With the multiband widener, you control how much is applied to individual frequency regions. Basically, divide your mix into the bands. When you increase the fader, you widen that band. If your value on the scale is positive, then you've widened your stereo image. If your value is negative, then the frequencies of that band are more toward the center. Keep an eye on the meters. The phase meter tells you how similar the left and right channels are. If they're identical, the meter will be all the way to the right. If they're different, it's going to be all the way to the left. The widening will draw the meter to the left. You can mute your bands so you can hear one at a time. That's a great way to understand which frequencies are coming from where in your stereo image. This meter provides a view of the stereo image. Stereo recordings should look like a random pattern, taller than wide, and this means the left and right channels are similar. Mono would show up here more as a vertical line. A horizontal pattern means the two channels are very different, which is okay, but it could result in some mono compatibility problems. Previously, while I was evaluating this piece, I'd mentioned that there's an issue with the lead instruments being bunched together. All the fundamentals seem to come right out the center, and I'd like to spread them out a bit. As you can see, the panning is very similar across the left and right channels. This could be a little wider. Let's have a listen to see how it looks in my meters. Let's work with band 2, where my lead instruments lie. We're going to drag up the fader while listening. Did you hear that point where the lead vocal lost focus? That's the hole in the middle effect. I also want to hear how it affects the blend of the lead, background vocals, as well as the accordion.
Trop doux de bois quand dans ma vie faisait froid.
And much more space between the background vocals and the lead, as well as between the lead and the accordion. Let me close our multiband effects tutorial with some general tips about multiband stereo imaging. Higher bands can handle more widening without it disturbing the listener. You may want to pull lower bands more toward the center with negative widening. Check the image on speakers, not only headphones. That's because headphones intrinsically make the image wider since none of one channel is heard in the other ear. Try positioning lower frequencies with multiband delay rather than panning so that you don't lose important fullness or power. Be aware that widening and delay can affect each other, so listen, listen, listen. Bypass the effect frequently for a sanity check. Be sure to check your mono compatibility also, and in Ozone you do that with the Channel Operations menu. This concludes our video about multiband effects. In our next lesson, we'll be taking a look at multiband dynamics.